ballistic missiles are different from other kinds of missiles, such as cruise missiles, for example. Ballistic missiles basically fly high and fast and re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. Cruise missiles basically, you could say, fly low and slow and run parallel and to the surface of the Earth. They hug the contours of the Earth they fly over, making them somewhat harder to detect for air and missile defenses. And also, they use different kinds of engines. A very critical difference is that both cruise missiles and ballistic missiles are defined by their mission. You have surface-to-surface missiles, which has ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, and you have anti-ship missiles, which has ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. The Islamic Republic has all of them. Iranian ballistic missiles are believed to be the largest in terms of an arsenal in the region. Iran has close range, short range, and medium range ballistic missiles, and Iran has various classes of land attack cruise missiles as well. Ballistic missiles differ from cruise missiles chiefly because of the speed, because of their ability to leave the atmosphere, and because of the kind of warhead that they will carry towards their target, and a fundamentally different engine. So think of ballistic missiles as flying high and fast, cruise missiles as flying low and slow. There's different costs, the different speeds, but fundamentally these are various elements of the Iranian missile arsenal, and they're all guided elements, meaning that they can be more precise. And this contrasts with unguided elements such as rockets, which are armed, but don't necessarily have a guided system in them. Iran is home to close-range systems, sometimes called tactical ballistic missiles or theater ballistic missiles that can fly up to 300 kilometers. Iran is also home to a significant array of liquid propellant and solid propellant short-range ballistic missiles that can fly anywhere from 300 kilometers to 1,000 kilometers. And then they do have medium-range ballistic missiles as well that go up to 2,000 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers to 2,000 kilometers. There are very realistic fears about a widening radius of Iranian missile power. Based on the declared Iranian arsenal with a 2,000-kilometer range cap, the Islamic Republic of Iran can basically hit every single US military installation in the CENTCOM area of operations. It can basically strike the known or the modern Middle East, which also is home to NATO ally Turkey, where there's the Incirlik base as well. But Iran, again, has a space launch vehicle program, as well as some missile capabilities that could be scaled up to give it up to a 4,000 kilometer, if not just over a 4,000 kilometer range.
They fired an intercontinental ballistic missile on Diego Garcia. That's 4,000 kilometers. I've been warning all the time. They have now the capacity to reach deep into Europe. They already have fired on a European country, Cyprus. They are putting everyone in their sights.
And while Iran has fired at least two of these systems of an unknown style towards the island of Diego Garcia, which is about 3,800 to 4,200 kilometers away from Iranian territory, depending on the angle of the launch and the location of the launch. If you reverse the trajectory, this puts large swaths of not just Eastern Europe, but Central and Western Europe. Basically, you could say all of continental Europe or major centers in continental Europe within range. This means the bulk of the NATO NATO military facilities in Central and Western Europe would now fall within range of Iranian ballistic missiles.
Well, look, we carry out assessments all the time in order to keep us safe, and there's no assessment that we're being targeted in that way at all. But of course, it's my job to ensure that British interests, British lives are always uppermost in my mind.
So the Islamic Republic of Iran, for well over a decade, has been bragging that it has jungles of missiles in these underground or subterranean depots and bases and bunkers where ballistic missile production happens, but also quite a bit of storage happens as well. We've seen the regime be willing to use, multimedia, social media, TV to go into these bases, to tour them, to magnify their deterrence, to talk about the size, quantity, and quality of their arsenal. And these are basically subterranean facilities, some of which are connected, many of which are not, that house these systems that make it actually harder to suppress the Islamic Republic's missile fire, because they're usually embedded into national geography. They're in chains. There's western chains, central chains, eastern chains, and then southern chains of missile bases as well. And there's openings carved into the earth where trucks that have these transporter erector launchers come out to be able to fire their missiles and then retreat and kind of go back into their national geography, taking advantage of the fact, again, that they're largely but not exclusively carved into the sides of mountains. So the Islamic Republic has had the beating heart of its ballistic missile production targeted by the US. Places like Hojir, places like Parchin, places like Shahrud, as well as other places like Sebnan and Isfahan have been struck. These are the names of cities that house major complexes and centers and facilities related to some form or another of ballistic missile production, motor development, testing, and missile assembly, and what have you. It's highly unlikely that the regime will be able to bounce back from this significant blow, not just against ballistic missile capacity, but capability and production. And that is really one of the successes thus far that we see of the US military mission. Now, how the Islamic Republic chooses to offset this through greater ties with the likes of Russia and China may be one, although I think it's unlikely that they'll flow major systems. I think it's more likely that they'll flow technologies, potentially to help them grow their long-range strike capabilities or provide targeting assistance, as reportedly Russia has been doing for this regime. For the early years of the Islamic Republic of Iran's ballistic missile program, there was one platform, copies of a Soviet Scud system or copies later of a North Korean system that defined the regime's long-range strike capabilities. And that was the Shahab liquid propellant, short range and medium range, Shahab 1, Shahab 2, Shahab 3 ballistic missile that was really synonymous with Iranian missile power. But over the past 2 decades, there's been a whole host of liquid propellant and solid propellant ballistic missiles that have come to matter and that have been increasingly used in the multiple iterations of conflict in the Middle East. On the solid propellant side, it's crucial to note the regime has the Fateh 110, the Fateh 313, the Zulfiqar, and also upgraded variants such as the Hajj Qasim and the Khaybar Shakan, for example. Also scaled up to medium range, there's the Sejil 2. These are all very important solid propellant platforms that the regime has been using, particularly on the lower end of that system. These are among the most precise ballistic missiles in the regime's arsenal. And then again, when we look at liquid propellant systems, medium range systems, you have the Emad, you have the Qadr, you have the Qiyam, which has been modified several times, and then the Khorramshahr, particularly the Khorramshahr 4, which can deliver the heaviest conventional payload that the Islamic Republic can deliver. And in fact, because it has one of the biggest warheads, it's been used several times in this conflict with Israel, not as a unitary warhead, but as a cluster warhead to deliver those cluster munitions, or what the regime calls a raining or a showering warhead.